welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be talking about pain. What is it? How to identify it? And our relationship to it. So let's begin. First and foremost, what is pain? Great question. Pain, as I like to define it, is a uncomfortable sensation coming from the body. It can also come from the mind and our emotional state, but it most often manifests itself in the body somehow. So that's pain, right? Simply a sensation. And I say this all the time to my in-person clients. Pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice, right? So when we're living with chronic pain, and we've got, whatever the cause of that chronic pain is, whether it's, an autoimmune disease or it's due to a, body part replacement like a knee surgery or a organ transplant, or maybe you had some kind of tear in your hip or your lumbar spine, right? So sometimes it's a manipulation. It's due to a manipulation that's happened within the body. Thank God for modern medicine, and we're able to, do these types of things. And also, they're not always the solution for living pain-free, right? Pain can come from emotions. It can come from trauma. It can come from stressful situations. And because our bodies are not really the smartest, right? When we think about our nervous systems and this crazy machine mechanism that we live within, we've basically got a computer up here, and then we've got a machine that the computer runs. Not much different than a car, right? So it's just meant to work in a certain way. And the beauty of our bodies is that if something starts failing, other systems come to help it out, right? But then when something gets overworked and something is failing, we have an overuse problem, which happens all the time. Pain can come from things of that nature. Pain can come from injuries, of course. I already mentioned chronic illness, chronic disease. Chronic overuse, misuse, right? It can show up in similar ways. Like I was mentioning, our bodies are not necessarily the smartest. And so when we have an injury or a misuse for a long period of time, and that's coupled with a toxic relationship or a bad job or, bullying in school, right? It's not uncommon to hear the story of 15 years later, Sally Sue, shows up to the doctor and she says, gosh, my shoulder's hurting. And they say, well, nothing's wrong. And she's like, well, shoot. So then she goes to therapy because she's, working on her mental health, and the therapist asks her about her shoulder pain, and they come to the conclusion that the first time that the shoulder pain had occurred was when she was in 5th grade, and she had a bully that was just horrific to her and pushed her down the stairs, and then she hurt her shoulder. And now she's got a bully at work who's bullying her in a similar way, and now her shoulder's hurting again, right? And it's this kind of mystical situation that's not really something that's been very proved by science. You can read books on it. The Body Keeps Score is a really good one. I wouldn't say that the body necessarily remembers, but what the body does do is it wants to protect us, right? And that's actually more of our ego and our minds. It wants to function at its most optimal rate and in its most optimal form. So when you encounter a situation and the last time that you were able to get out of that situation, there was some kind of discomfort, the body's going to give you that same discomfort so that you get out of that situation. Does that make sense? So here we are kind of in a convoluted space. I've thrown a lot of things out there, and we've sort of gotten into this like more spiritual aspect of like what's going on when it comes to pain. And that can be really hard to concept, and it can be hard to wrap our heads around, especially right at the beginning when we're first dealing with everything. So I want to kind of come back down to the ground for a moment here and talk about what exactly are the different sensations of pain, and what sensations are necessary to be concerned about, and which sensations are sensations to be, managed and considered. So any sharp shooting pain is going to have to do with our nervous system. It's going to have to do with our with how our muscles and our bones and our skeletal structure and our body structure is integrated, or is interacting with our nerves. So things like sciatic, right, tends to be a structural problem. Now, kind of jumping into that esoteric space again, that structural problem might be because of stress. Lumbar stress lumbar is a very common place for people to hold stress. When you're stressed in the lumbar, everything gets tight, your sciatic gets pinched, and bada bing, bada boom, your body's like, hey, let's do something about the sciatic, right? So we go to PT and we do our exercise and we stretch and we roll out and we get massages and we acupuncture and we all of a sudden, fix the issue, but we don't fix the cause of the stress. Sciatic keeps coming back. We fix the cause of the stress and we add all of these other embodiment, intuitive movement practices, tools, etc. And now we've healed the issue, right? Does that mean your sciatica is never going to come back? No. But does that mean that you now understand where it comes from, why it happens, and how to fix it, and maybe even how to prevent it? Yes. That's the goal of this course, right? Jumping back into what I was talking about, sharpshooting pains. These are pains that I would be a little more concerned about, right? We don't really want to be having sharpshooting pains. Oftentimes it means that we can't move in our full range of motion. Numbness and tingling associated with those things is also not very good, because that's going to decrease the way that our muscles are able to turn on, the way that our muscles are able to communicate and be utilized. And so if pinching goes on for too long, then we lose our ability, we lose that nerve dies, and then we have to rewire our entire system to, lift our arm again, right? Or whatever it is. So whenever there's sharpshooting pain, whenever there's numbness or tingling, we want to be cautious. We want to move with understanding and, caution, as I've mentioned. So those two are kind of areas where we want to be more, slow and like, maybe I shouldn't do this movement. Areas where we're kind of like, I don't know, dull, achy pains that are within 24-hour windows. These are pains that we can just accept is the body's way of being like, hey, you worked me out too hard, or hey, you sat in a car for too long, right? But typically these are the types of pains that if we move, or if we get a massage, or if we do our tools, they'll go away pretty quickly, right? What's another kind of pain, right? A hotness or like a tearing sensation, right? Sometimes that occurs when we're doing things like stretching. These are pretty okay as long as, once again, we're not hearing any snaps, we're not feeling any numbness or tingling or sharpshooting pain that comes on and happens really quickly. Occasionally when we're stretching, we will have, a little bit of numbness or tingling show up. Usually if it comes on really slowly, we can sink into it. And then we want to release. We don't want to be in that space for more than 1 minute to 2 minutes. That's when things can get a little dangerous. But if it's coming on slow and it's just, the body's losing circulation, we can usually manage that for up to 1.5 minutes, right? Let's just say that to be safe. So when it comes to our pain, and when it comes to deciding if we're going to move through it, or are we going to move to it, are we going to ignore it, are we going to become a hypochondriac and go to the doctor all the time, right? How do we know when to connect and when to be concerned. I think for me and what I've learned about myself and my body, and then what I've read in studies and what I've learned from training other people, is that if you show up to your training session and you are struggling with pain, you do not want to move through that pain, especially if it's a sharp shooting, pinching, numbing kind of a pain. You want to move in your range of motion. So don't move through the pain, move to the pain, and constantly test your range of motion. So for example, if you're having a hard time lifting your shoulder up sideways laterally, right? Maybe this is too much, but this is okay. Let's keep moving here. Use the weight, stay in your range of motion that feels good and comfortable, right? Maybe after 10 or 15, we've warmed up the body a little bit, try and go a little higher, see how that feels, right? Do another 10 to 15 in that, then your second set, a little bit higher. Third set, try to get back up into that space, right? Move to the pain, not through the pain. Eventually, you'll be able to go higher as you get stronger and more capable, right? If you know for a fact that you've got an injury or you injured yourself because you fell down the stairs or whatever it is, allow your body to rest. And then when it's time to come back into exercise and when it's time to come back into movement, which by the way, you should never really stop moving. And again, this kind of goes back to our intuitive movement practice of like, okay, I've hurt myself, I've thrown my back out, I've fallen down the stairs, I've got a bruised tailbone, what am I gonna do? Do the exercises that don't hurt. Here I am again, go to the pain, not through the pain, right? Do the exercises that feel good. Try to just explore and discover what doesn't bother you, right? And so that way, when you go to the gym and you start actually like lifting again and you do an exercise, and during the exercise everything feels good and dandy, but tomorrow you're getting this dull, achy sensation in your joints, right? Monitor how long that lasts. If the dull, achy sensation, if the soreness lasts 24, 48 hours, that's pretty normal, right? 3 days I would say is the max. But if you're feeling this dull, achy sensation for up to a week, there might be something bigger going on. And that might be a moment to be like, oh, I'm still feeling this. I'm still not feeling like I've recovered enough from that one session that really shouldn't have put me out this bad. Maybe there's something bigger going on, right? So those are a little bit of examples of what pain is, how to deal with it, how to kind of have a conversation with yourself about it. And recognizing that the pain itself is not the problem. It's the way that your body is trying to communicate with you, right? Especially when we have chronic pain, we tend to have a chronic story as well that's attributed to it. And so I know for me, I have this frozen shoulder impingement situation going on here that has shifted from my rhomboid into, my rotator cuff into my pec, and it's moved over 10 years. And, it's a constant thing that I'm working on. Overall, it's way better, right? When it first happened, it was the scariest thing ever. I couldn't lift my arm. I couldn't move my neck. So for years, I was scared of that happening. But I didn't have the tools to prevent the injury. So it would come back every 6 months to a year. Once I got the tools to prevent it, I was still scared. And it wasn't until it showed up and I was able to move to the pain and not through the pain and learn that I can still move, that I can tackle this discomfort, this pain without stopping the rest of my life, that I was able to be like, oh, I can manage this, right? So it's all about getting back there. It's all about trusting the body. This is like another common theme that we're kind of coming back to over and over again, is just trusting the body. So these exercises can be kind of hard, right? And I encourage you that if you want to journal, or if you want to show up in like a voice memo, or during your exercise, if you're the type of person that like writes things down or keeps logs of stuff, pay attention to those facets. Today I did squats, I was able to get over 100 pounds and my knees didn't hurt. I changed my stance. 1 week later, I went a little higher than 100 pounds, my knees were hurting, right? What can we do to help get us to a place where we can lift a little bit heavier, right? So that our knees don't hurt. How can we strengthen the muscles up above and below the joint so that we can be more stable in our squat, right? So I recommend, not overwhelming yourself too much, but again, just like bringing more awareness into these places. And knowing, again, taking the opportunity to listen to the body. Because if this is a pain that's a problem, your body will tell you. It'll be like, this is an issue, right? Go get checked out. And that can be, it doesn't have to be for your joints. It doesn't have to be for your muscles. It can be for your organs as well. It can be for your stomach. It can be for your liver. Okay, that might take a little bit more kind of sleuthing, detective work to figure out that it's like, oh, my gallbladder is having a problem. But I believe that you can do it, especially with all these tools that we've gotten and the amount of commitment that you're willing to put into yourself and showing up and listening and honoring and being honest with yourself and transparent and fully present. So there you have it. That's what we've got for pain. Kind of went a lot of different directions with that video. It was a lot of information. I'd love to answer any questions, comments, or concerns in our Facebook chat. And yeah, thank you so much for showing up.